So we got some reactions I'm gonna do. This is seven true creepy horror stories animated. We're gonna get into the first story. Let's get it. 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
My high school is near an area with a lot of gang violence, so lockdowns were a rather common occurrence. However, the one event that sticks out in my mind when I think back didn't actually have anything to do with that. The only time I actually felt scared wasn't because of a fugitive or a shooting. It was because of a student who everyone already knew was dangerous. His name was Jason. He was one of those kids that was crazy smart, but had a lot of problems with authority, focusing, socializing, and so on. I'm sure everyone knows at least one kid like that from school. He got suspended for bringing a knife to school once, and then expelled the same year for trying to strangle a teacher with a shoelace. He came back the next year, though, after going to an intervention school for several months. Unfortunately, it seems like he came back worse than when he left. I got the pleasure of being stuck in the front office with him once, when we both got in trouble for different things at around the same time, and ended up sitting in there together. The assistant principal was supposed to give both of us an individual talking to, but it must have been a crazy day because we had to wait for her to get through talking to someone else first. In the span of a few minutes, Jason talked my ear off about the kids he met in the intervention school, like pyromaniacs and drug dealers and even gang members. They were definitely a bad influence on him, but honestly, I think he should have stayed there. He seemed like he belonged. He talked very highly of his experience, and he said he made friends there, which surprised me. I was actually kind of entertained by the stories of what he got up to with those kids. But then he dropped a piece of information that I knew was bad news. Jason told me that someone at the intervention school had helped him learn how to make a bomb. Right before I could ask him if he was serious, the assistant principal came out of her office and called Jason in. That was the last time, and really the only time that I ever talked to him. It was really weird, because despite all of the stuff I heard about him, he was actually in a great mood and seemed very happy, even though he was in trouble again. I thought it was possible that he might get better, but I realize now the only thing that made him happy was remembering the violent criminals he hung out with and thinking about ways to hurt people. By the third week of school, I'm sure he was dying to get back to that other school. That's the only reason I can think of for what he did, because otherwise it feels completely unprovoked, unless he really just got a pleasure from doing it. During second period one day, soon after the day I talked to him, he called in a bomb threat. He was apprehended quickly, but he refused to give up the location of the bomb, so the whole school was evacuated. I vividly remember the feeling of my stomach doing a flip when I saw Jason's clear backpack sitting against the wall of the hallway we were walking through. The inside was stuffed with a garbage bag, so I knew it had to be the bomb. I told one of the administrators, who radioed it in. I felt lucky then that it didn't go off when all those kids were filing out the building, packed in like sardines. I was shaking as I was walking out to the football field, but I was able to get a seat at the bleachers instead of having to stand. We were out there in lockdown mode for hours, baking in the hot sun and just waiting to go back inside. But the bomb squad had to be called in to take care of the bag, and the whole school had to be swept for other bombs afterwards. I went from being scared, to annoyed, to bored, and then finally I was restless. I started horsing around with the people sitting next to me, pretending I was getting a heat stroke and needed to lay down. Nobody was buying any of my BS or making any room for me, so as a joke, I laid down across their feet. It was all pretty funny, and they were kicking me and laughing, but while I was down there, I saw something that petrified me. Something was taped to the bottom of the seat right in front of my face. I pushed the kid's legs apart to get a better look. And of course, he thought I was being weird until he saw the look on my face. He was sitting right on top of a bomb. It was a box wrapped in duct tape with a note that said, This is the real one, I swear. I flipped out and jumped from the bleachers, twisting my ankle and causing a massive panic as everyone caught wind of the danger and fled all at once. With nowhere safe to run and 1,000 kids running out of control, the whole situation was almost disastrous. A couple freshmen got trampled and ended up with broken bones. Kids hopped the fences and ran out into the road, swarmed into nearby shops, and a lot of kids took the opportunity to just run all the way home. By the time the panic stopped, the school was basically deserted. I'm sure if Jason ever found out, he would die of laughter. What really makes it embarrassing, though, is the fact that it was all fake. None of the bombs were real. The thing is, Jason was totally smart enough to make real bombs and actually kill people. And the only reason he didn't was because his goal wasn't to go to prison for a bunch of years, but to go to juvie or another intervention school. All that fear and panic and wasted time was just part of a sick joke Jason was playing. What makes me shudder is knowing that if he had decided to go through with it, a lot of people would have died, and I would have very likely been one of them. Nobody was prepared for the threat. He pointed out a gigantic weakness in the school's response. His placements would have been extremely deadly if they weren't just fake bombs. I don't know where Jason is now, but I hope he stays far away from me for the rest of my life.
That's wicked, bro.
There used to be this kid at my school named Blake. Blake faced a lot of bullying from pretty much everybody, both behind his back and directly to his face. It's not like he didn't deserve it, though. He was prone to violence and often got in trouble for screaming in teachers' faces, because he was clearly indoctrinated into some crazy ideas that went against what they teach in school. I guess that means it's not totally his fault for how his parents raised him, but that never stopped anybody. Blake was just as physically repulsive as he was in conversation. He almost got kicked out of school for harassing a girl pretty badly after she rejected him for smelling like hot garbage. If only that had gone through, then things would have ended differently. It started one day when I was in history class with Blake. He stopped the class to dispute something the teacher said about the Civil War, and it ended up becoming a huge thing. The teacher was pretty cold with shutting Blake down with the facts, humiliating him pretty badly. This led to Blake screaming a bunch of stuff about how the country had been ruined. Then we all collectively laughed him off, and he stormed out of the school. That was a Friday. Over the course of the weekend, Blake posted a bunch of stuff on his Snapchat. Pictures of him holding pieces from his dad's gun collection, which he was known for bragging about extensively, and pictures of him posing in front of a Nazi flag, which was also his dad's, I assume. But the worst part of all was a photo of our history teacher printed out and taped to a cardboard box, which he used for target practice, with the caption, "Getting ready for school on Monday." The posts were pretty chilling. For years, people had joked that Blake would do something like that one day, but nobody ever thought he actually had the guts. Several people reported the post to the school, but what they should have done was report it to the police. Nobody, including myself, took it seriously enough. If I had, there was no chance I would have gone to school until he was taken care of. At school the following Monday, from what I heard afterwards, Blake came to school late, during 5th period when we had our American history class. He wasn't able to get into class like normally. He was confronted by the school resource officer and a couple of admins who demanded to search his backpack. That's when he drew the pistol and shot the resource officer and ran off. I heard the shot from the other side of the school. Everything went silent. Moments later, the lockdown order went out. We all knew it was Blake. I looked at my teacher, who was white as a sheet. All I could see were the bullet holes in the picture of his face from Blake's post in my head. After a few seconds, he regained his composure and went through the procedure of locking the door and turning out the lights, then ordering all of us to hide out of sight. Not a moment too soon either. We all knew Blake was heading for him, and all of us by proximity. I barely had time to think to myself about how those dumb lockdown drills weren't so dumb anymore. Blake made it to the classroom door in under a minute. He started banging on the door and screaming, "I know you're in there, I'm not an idiot." People started crying into their shirts to keep quiet. Others took out their phones and started live streaming or texting their loved ones, assuming they wouldn't survive. Even I started to think that way. I couldn't think of anything to do. I didn't even have the presence of mind to think of what I might do to fight or protect myself if he were to get inside. My mind was too frayed, and it all felt so unreal. The only thing running through my head was the fact that I was about to die while sitting on the tile floor of my high school, cowering in the darkness in a huddle of students that was about to become a pile of bodies. Suddenly, a shot rang out. The crying became screaming, and everyone started to panic. In the moment, I made a split-second decision and ran over to the window, opting to jump from the second story, instead of just sitting there and waiting for Blake to come in and shoot me. A bunch of kids followed me, but then I fumbled around. Somebody else shoved me out of the way because I was taking too long and sent me to the floor. That's when I looked back through the door and noticed something. Blake was holding his face with both of his hands, and the blood was seeping out between his fingers. The door handle on the inside was lopsided, like he had been trying to break in. I sat there, staring, just trying to make sense of it. In the chaos, the teacher was yelling at us to get away from the windows and get back to hiding. He started calling my name because I wasn't moving, and that's when I blankly said the words, "I think Blake shot himself." I said it pretty quietly for how loud the classroom was, and I said it like a husk. But enough people heard me to stop what they were doing and go silent. A friend of mine ran to the door and looked out the window right as Blake was running away. I finally got up and stood there next to him. Blood was splattered across the floor, and in the newfound quietness, I could hear Blake's cries of pain echoing through the hallway. Stupidly, and against every bit of sense I had, I tried to open the door, but it was broken. Not just locked, as all doors are supposed to open from the inside. It was broken. We were trapped inside the classroom, but at least Blake was gone. Hours later, we were finally freed and slowly learned what had happened. Blake tried to open the door by shooting the door handle, but he ended up mangling the lock completely shut and causing an explosion of metal shrapnel, which flew up right into his face. A piece of twisted metal got lodged in his eye, blinding him, and that was the end of his rampage. A lucky break for all of us, and it goes to disprove the myth that you can open a lock just by shooting it. Blake surrendered before leaving the school and was tried as an adult. He'll be in prison for the next 20 years at least. The resource officer he shot also got lucky and recovered without serious lasting effects to his health.
I'm gonna just keep uploading more of these horror stories, see if you guys fuck with it. Though that was two, because they seem pretty short. They seem like they're 67 minutes each. Like I said, I'm watching it through 7 true creepy horror stories animated by MJM Animation. Oh, I'm sorry, MGV Animations. I'll see you on the next one. All right, bet.